I do want to ask you, first things first.
Mm.
How long have you, like, when did you become a Silent Hill acolyte?
Pretty much since day one. Me and a friend of mine named Shane, we lived in Tennessee, and there was like a mom and pop video rental place.
Mm-hmm.
And on Saturdays, Shane would come over to my house and we rent a video game and we played Silent Hill together. And it was like, I mean, I think in Midwich Elementary, there's a door that you walk into where it's the bathroom, and then you walk out of the door and you're in a
Yeah,
completely different
yeah.
area. And then we looked on the map, and that just freaked us out. Just the idea that a video game would do that.
Yeah.
So ever since that day,
You
basically.
know, this game, this game wasn't really like viscerally scary to me in any
Mm,
sense of the word. Like I never felt tension. I mean, like I felt some tension, but I was never scared
yeah.
in the like definition sense of the word. But there's a certain few things this game does that like made the blood drain from my body that not many other, like maybe Metal Gear Solid 2 did,
Mm,
that like kind of moments, which, and they're not even big. One was obviously that the bathroom thing that you mentioned.
mm,
Two, I think, was at the end when you're in the nowhere and it's just like all the maps jumbled up into one. I was like,
yeah.
this shit is so cool. Uh,
Yeah.
but the one that like hit me the most, and this is weird, and everyone's gonna make fun of me for it, but when
Let's hear
you're
it.
when you're walking in to Silent Hill the first time, the first 5 minutes of the game, and Cheryl's gone from the car, and you're going to where those little demon babies are. The first time the sirens happen and all that, like
Mm,
probably literally 5 minutes into the game, there's a camera angle where you're walking, and the camera goes down towards Harry, and it
mm,
twists like on the y axis to
mm.
like pass while he passes by.
Yeah.
That scared the shit out of me. I don't know
Really?
why. Yeah, I think,
Kind of like a voyeuristic thing,
yeah,
maybe?
yeah, because
Mm,
I came directly from, not directly, but very recently I played Resident Evil 1.
hmm.
First of all, Silent Hill 1 blows the fuck out of Resident Evil 1 just as a game, in my opinion. Um,
Interesting.
I
Okay.
maybe it might just be due to the fact that like there's multiple years of, you know, industry um, kind of talk about Silent Hill 1, and
Mm,
all of the discourse and all of the conversation about Resident Evil 1 is on the remake, not on the original.
yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and what year did those two games come out in relation to each other?
RE1 was like 96, right?
Yeah, I know that. Let's see, Silent Hill release date
98?
99. So
Oh, wow.
there's like 3 years there where, you know, you have a more grown up industry overall maybe that could have led to that, but
Mm,
Resident Evil especially, never once was I scared, or it was just like, and again, like, that might be down to me playing Resident Evil 1 technically before, when I play the remake a bunch, so I kind of
mm.
know everything that's going to happen. But Silent Hill 1, like, while it wasn't literally scary, it did many things. Like I said, Metal Gear Solid 2 is like the best analogy I can make, where like it was meta contextually scary, not actually
Hmm.
the game.
Yeah. No,
Like,
I get what you're good. Yeah, exactly. You know, I've run into a problem now where I play these old games that used to freak me out as a teenager, and as an adult, obviously they don't do much to me.
yeah.
As a kid, Resident Evil really got to me because I have a weird thing with zombies for some reason. They
Mhm.
scare the hell out of me. But you know, as an adult now, I more appreciate it for a sort of atmosphere of isolation and a constant sense of foreboding, I
Yeah.
guess, is how I would describe it. And it's the same with Silent Hill, but Silent Hill has a very cool existential bend to it
Yeah.
that really messes with me, and I like it a lot. It doesn't scare me. It just creeps me out, I guess.
Yeah. No, that is kind of exactly how I feel. Uh, while we're on that like Resident Evil 1 to Silent Hill 1 pipeline here, I
Mm,
think one of the biggest differences I noticed between the games, and why I like Silent Hill 1, or liked my experience with Silent Hill 1 more than Resident Evil 1, was I think that RE1, because of just maybe it was just the limitation of what they knew how to do with the console at the time or whatever it was. The game is extremely segmented by the loading times.
Mhm.
So you're in a room, and if something scary happens in the room and you go to the next room, you have like 5 seconds of loading to just
Yeah.
calm down and take a break.
Mhm.
Silent Hill, on the other hand, is very good at not only do the loading screens not feel as long, but it's constantly pushing you. Uh, Resident Evil 1 has a lot of backtracking, obviously. Silent Hill 1
Mhm.
technically does because you go back to the locations when they're in nowhere, but like you're not actually going through the same room like 20 times throughout the whole game. You're just kind of in these little hub locations and then move
Yeah.
on.
Silent Hill is more about a very large area with a bunch of rooms in
Yeah.
it, and you're systematically checking each door to make
Mhm.
sure that it's locked. Whereas with Resident Evil 1, every room is
Yeah.
accessible at some point in the game. Silent Hills 1, 2, and 3, two-thirds of the rooms can never be opened.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dynamic. You're sort of funneled down the line with Silent Hill. And there is, some backtracking, like in Midwich Elementary when
Yeah.
you come across the hand that's clasping the metal thing and you have to go get
Mhm.
the acid and come back. Very small amount, but enough that you can tell it was inspired by, the old survival horror tropes.
Yeah, and I think it does that well enough that they kind of knew what what worked in Resident Evil 1, because there is a lot of stuff that works, I think, even in their first time around regarding to the actual survival horror bits of resource management, backtracking. Like I forget, maybe this was your video on RE1 remake, or someone said this at some point. I think it was you, that if you asked someone who played Resident Evil 1, they could probably draw you a map of the mansion
Yeah.
in their head, which kind of stuck with me the whole time since I saw that video. And I really liked that point about it. And even though Silent Hill does take a lot from Resident Evil 1 and the kind of horror genre of that time, it elevates it in a way that to me feels better overall, but you don't have that sense of familiarity with
Mm.
the building that you're in.
Yeah.
And I think having, especially with the way that Silent Hill 1 is set up, I think having that familiarity would actually be bad, because a lot of
Mm.
what you're seeing is creepy and weird, because you're walking into a school, you're like, this is a fucked up school. And then you keep going in the school, and then everything changes. You're like, this school is even more fucked up now. And like, if you knew that, if you were like in the school the whole time and you were just stuck with this kind of non-changing environment,
Mm.
it would lose that aspect to it, which I think is very effective.
I think, mentioning the other world transition, that is your backtracking. You are
Yeah.
going through the same areas again. They're all just rearranged and messed up, and you have to find different paths through them and stuff. Yeah.
I think a game that does that really well recently, to a certain degree, is actually Resident Evil 4 Remake, where like when you go back through the village, it is still the village, but like now there's a bunch of buildings falling down and damage
Yeah, yeah.
everywhere, and you have to take a different
Mm.
path, kind of thing. Resident Evil 1, maybe they do it in 2 and 3 original. I don't know. That's on my list, but it's always the same. Like nothing really ever changes with the
Mhm.
environment, and you feel like you don't have an impact on the environment either. Like you're clearing out enemies, but the mansion doesn't get any different whether there's zero enemies or it's infested with zombies.
Mm.
Um,
I'll say you'll probably enjoy RE3
hmm,
in that sense more. RE2, you have a bit of that kind of effect on the environment, but if you simplify it down to its core, it's still a key and lock door system.
yeah,
C4 blows up the wall, same thing.
yeah, definitely. And now, while we're here, I want to make sure we don't get too far into the show without me introing it. Hi, I'm Ben Gerkman. This is Cross Circle Squared, and with us today we have the wonderful Avalanche Jared, best survival horror YouTuber except for 12 others that I could name, and
Mm. Off the top of your
worst,
head, yeah,
and worst streamer ever,
mm,
as he will
for
probably
sure.
agree, and has spent a lot of time on Twitter today talking about. Um, Today we're talking about Silent Hill 1. If you didn't catch that somehow, And I recently just played this game for the first time. Jared, you're a veteran. I want you to go
Mm.
through just like this whole series, the roller coaster of good game, good game, good game, dog shit, dog shit, dog shit. And kind of I just want to hear your history with this franchise, and especially since this podcast is about Silent Hill 1 in specific, your kind of the mind space that this game has had for you in the past 25 years or whatever 25 years now. The 25th anniversary was Friday, I think. So this
Wow,
podcast is
damn.
timely in that regard. But yeah,
Mm.
just kind of like your history and what this game has meant for you over the years. I'd like to know.
So Silent Hill 1 coming out was something I would imagine most people around my age at the time wasn't even aware that Silent Hill was being developed.
Yeah.
You know, Konami was prolific at the time, but I don't know. I just don't remember ever seeing any press for a game called Silent Hill. And if I did, I probably just wrote it off or something. But when me and a friend saw it on the rack at that mom and pop video rental store, when you look at the back, you can see that it's like a horror game, and it just looks like a survival horror game
Yeah.
to me based on the screenshots. So I was pretty into it from the start. Just I was sold on the idea of it. And then when you start it up, because I had no idea that it was being made, I didn't know what this thing was. So I'm coming in blind completely, and I'm expecting what I'm used to with Resident Evil, which, as much as I love Resident Evil, is a very simplistic, straightforward kind of deal. You know, Wesker being a traitor, I think, was the
Yeah.
craziest that they achieved in that storyline. And then immediately I'm being hit with Silent Hill with a bunch of questions, like chief among them, is this real? You know, you
Yeah.
wake up out of this car crash and stuff, and that was a big deal for me because you're challenging my brain with the puzzles and the exploration, which, you know, takes a sharp mind to keep track of at least. And then you're also
Maybe for you,
challenging
it's
my,
fine for me. I don't know. It's
yeah,
whatever
you
you
just no
want.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it I don't know, it hit me in a different way. You
Mhm.
know, it's not that like one's more intellectual and intellectually stimulating than the
Yeah.
other. Um, like I said before, Silent Hill has that existential dread aspect to it that really hits me good. You know, I like the idea of wondering, is what I saw real? Which part of this was the dream? You know, like that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that. And the fact that it almost never gets answered throughout the game really helps out.
That's
And,
true.
and honestly, go ahead.
Yeah, I upon finishing this game, I haven't usually what I do as soon as I beat a game is watch like 50 videos on it, like
Yeah.
things you didn't know or, X game explained or whatever. And I
Right,
didn't do
right.
that for this. Mainly so that we could have a conversation about it and kind of, unravel what is true and what isn't in the podcast, but uh
Mm,
it's a feeling that even to this day, like I correctly guessed on our Alan Wake 2 episode, where these kind of games are very far in between, where it's you mentioning that like Resident Evil 1 and its cohorts are not less intellectually interesting than Silent Hill, but they're interesting in a different way. Like the devs of Resident Evil were trying to make a game that had tension and would scare you, whereas this they're pretty direct in what they were saying. Like, you're going into this,
yes.
there's no misdirection. You're
Mm,
going into it, there's a zombie outbreak, and you kind of uncover the story, but there's never questions that you have. and
mm,
and you mentioning Wesker being bad is like, yeah, okay, the guy that's like an asshole this whole time and disappears, and who you see halfway through the game tell Barry, like, don't tell Jill about this or I'll kill
yeah.
your family or whatever. Like,
Mm,
it's that's not, it's a backdrop, whereas Silent Hill, it's the focus, which is much more interesting
yes.
to me, at least. um,
Mm,
and that's part of the reason why I'm excited for Silent Hill 2 and 3 as well, because there's, in my shorter experience compared to yours with the history of the medium, there's really only one game in my head that achieved that, and it was Alan Wake 2. Certainly maybe Spec
mm,
Ops The Line a little bit, but
mm,
its big shtick was the fact that it's you think it's dumb and then it's not dumb, and it still ends
Yeah.
up not being that intellectual at the end of it. It just surprises you
Mm.
that it's not completely stupid, like Gears of War
Yeah.
kind of like shoot guys, big evil kind of thing.
Mm.
And so coming to this, it's in like this genre of its own, of horror that is psychological, but I don't know. I wouldn't even call this really psychological horror. It's more mystery than that almost.
Mm.
It's an analogy I thought of in the car earlier this morning was like this game does to your brain what I wished the case board in Alan Wake 2 did in gameplay, where
Mm.
in both of these games you have like you go into an area and there are these multiple like axioms of interest where like this could go one way, this could go one way. It's like these like multiple little quests almost of
Mm.
lore, not literally in like go pick up things, but in like what happened here, who's involved, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in Alan Wake 2, it's you see the piece of evidence, you put it on the board, and Saga goes, "Okay, I have to go to this location now to find out more." It doesn't let you
Mm.
solve it for yourself.
Yeah.
Silent Hill kind of does that in your head, where it's like you're putting it on the case board in your mind, and then you're like, okay, now what do I have to do to uncover this?
Mm.
Which I forget your stance on it, but I've definitely talked to a lot of people that didn't like the case board in Alan Wake 2 because of that. It was just kind of like it was like an objective marker, but like a smarter objective marker, but its potential was so much greater. And I think
That's how I
this
put it.
this game can achieve that with in a way like without the case board. You're doing it yourself, just playing the game. Like I had to write lots of notes to beat this game. I didn't use any guides. I didn't use like any
Nice.
nothing.
Hell yeah.
So, obviously when I'm
Did the puzzle with the piano in Midwich, did that trip
yeah.
you up at all?
No, so I
Okay,
mean it
good.
took me a while, obviously, but
Mhm.
like it wasn't I could get what they're going at.
Yeah.
In order to solve it. I just had to uncover more because at first I didn't see that you could read what was on the wall, and so I spent some time there and
Mhm.
figuring out that you have to use the broken notes because it's the voiceless birds or whatever.
Yeah.
There were like different sections of understanding of this puzzle. Like as I tried different solutions, I would broaden my horizon of what the solution could be. And that is
Mm.
actually a complaint I have with this game is that none of the puzzles in this game reach that height. Like that, the piano puzzle, maybe you could argue it's bad because it takes so much time and it's just confusing generally. But that being one of the first puzzles you get, arguably the first puzzle you have to do, other than find the 3 keys for
Yeah.
the door to the school, which isn't
Mm.
really a puzzle. It's just like a like a search and rescue the
Yeah.
keys kind of thing.
Mhm.
As the first puzzle in the game, it kind of set my expectations really high for what this game could do, and then the next hardest puzzle is like you have to put the camera on the wall in nowhere and put the patterns into the door, which is like, yeah, that's cool, but it's not making me think. It's just
I
press
gotcha.
things until it works.
I feel like you're gonna enjoy Silent Hill 2
Mm.
probably more in that sense. There's a lot of puzzles that require you to follow the logic they're giving you,
Yeah.
which is nice. For example, with that piano puzzle, like you did, I had to figure it out on my own when I first played it as a teenager because I didn't have access to the internet,
Yeah.
and you had to
You can go to the
physically own a
library
strategy
and
guide.
download print
This
out
was back.
a web page.
I think this was back before you could get on the internet of the library. I
Wow.
mean,
Okay.
we were dialing up to AOL with a 56K modem,
Yeah.
on a good day. So this was old school, but yeah, it's figure outable. As a teenager, I was looking through it, and then you can figure it out. It does set a high bar for the rest of them. I feel like when I was coming into it, I was expecting Resident Evil puzzles, which is like, push this block here.
Yeah.
And Silent Hill puzzles are less mechanical in that sense. I think Resident Evil requires a little more of that. This goes in this place kind of thing, where
Yeah.
Silent Hill's a little more, here's a poem. Now flip switches in a way that makes sense with the poem or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. It's good. I think over like there are many limitations that I could probably, if this game was released today, I know enough about game dev to be able to like give reasonings for certain things in a game. Like
Mm.
I saw people on Twitter complaining that Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad game doesn't have like physics on her head dangly things. I'm like, yeah, but like look how much they're moving around. Look at the facial animations of what they're doing there. It's they could only do one or the other. And when you go back, and I can figure that out just through like Intuit essentially. But when you go back to something like Silent Hill 1, I know nothing about the limitations at the time. So if something is weird or doesn't reach my expectations, I can't just in my brain go, well, obviously they couldn't do that. Like that wasn't in the that wasn't in the realm of possibility for what they were trying to do here. My brain just goes, it's bad that they didn't do it the way that it could have been. When in some instances, like it could have just been the fault of the hardware and the development timeline at the time.
Sure, yeah.
And I can't really. That's one of the things I've noticed going back and playing a lot of these older titles is that I have no like discourse. How do you even put this? I don't know anything about the games or the situation these games are in at the time. I'm just playing them in a vacuum.
So you don't have like a frame of reference.
Yeah. And so my frame of reference for Silent Hill is Metal Gear Solid 1 and Resident Evil 1.
Mm.
And those are 3 years apart. Technology moved very fast back then. And Metal Gear Solid 1 is a completely different game. So like I can't necessarily even put on what I know from one game to another because these games are so different. And I don't know enough about the situation at the time to be able to make any of those guesses, which I think does hurt this game in its playability today. If you're going back to it for the first time, I think Silent Hill 1 though is much, much more playable than Metal Gear Solid 1 or Resident Evil 1 by like a long shot. I think maybe it comes down to combat, especially like Metal Gear Solid 1 combat is actual like dog. It is just
awful.
Terrible. And Resident Evil 1, you can get it pretty quick if you play a bunch of tank control Resident Evil games. But I feel like if you're not used to that, it's going to trip you up a lot. And even though Silent Hill 1 has tank controls, I don't even know how you would describe this. Maybe you have a term for it, but the camera is dynamic. And so it moves with you. So it feels more like Resident Evil 4, the original, than Resident Evil 1, even though it's like in hardware and timeline and like actual design, it's way closer to Resident Evil. It still feels way more like the third-person games of today.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and you're right. That's the word I would use is the camera is dynamic. It follows you around.
Yeah.
And it's not on a because with a lot of, for example, Code Veronica, Resident Evil Code Veronica, the camera is a little more dynamic, but it follows you on a fixed track. So it's always in the same spot. So, with Silent Hill, you can, center the camera back over your shoulder if you need to, or there are moments when it has more traditional fixed perspectives and stuff in a room. And to share those two together, the tank controls, it feels different, like, for example, Tomb Raider. Everybody hates tank controls. But
I tried to play that on my Retroid Pocket 4 that I just got. Oh my, that game is uncontrollable to me, at least. It is
interesting.
I imagine if I play it enough, I could probably get better at it. Like I did with tank controls, 6 years ago whenever I played Resident Evil 1 originally, but it is tough, that game.
Tank control driven precision platforming.
Yeah.
Awful idea.
Yeah, no. I don't think that's why no one has attempted that pretty much ever since. There's like Tomb Raider was tank control platformer, and then I don't know anything that would have been a tank control platformer since then. They did go on for pretty long with that though, so I don't know. What, Tomb Raider 5 had tank controls, right? I'm not quite sure.
Honestly, I played Tomb Raiders 1 through 3 and never touched another one ever again.
I'm gonna shoot Gobbins a message. Gobbins knows.
He'll know.
I'm gonna ask him. Let's see.
And he responds immediately with like a Wikipedia article worth of shit.
Yeah. Let's see. Does Tomb Raider 5 have tank controls? Okay, we'll get our answer at some point. Our caller
Mm,
into the show. Um, but yeah, no, the camera I like this much more than a lot of the even the contemporary third person camera. I think has its issues.
mm,
Especially you can see that in Alan Wake 2. And I'm going to make a lot of references to Alan Wake 2, but I think these games are very similar just in feel that it's kind of the best reference point for a lot of this.
mm.
And not just because we just had a podcast on Alan Wake 2 that you should watch, but I think it's like Alan Wake 2 is as close as you could get to like a modern Silent Hill in a couple of ways and just like feel, oh, we got
Big
an answer
compliment.
from
Hell yeah.
Gobbins. He said, yes, it did have tank controls. So yeah, like we were
Damn. Hell
saying,
yeah.
they didn't figure it out until like mid 2000s at that point. So,
Mm,
but you know, I feel like in Alan Wake 2, especially with the combat not being as snappy or as good as a lot of people I think wanted it to be, you can feel the limitations of the third person camera. You mentioned in Alan Wake 1 you really liked how that camera worked, and although I didn't like the gameplay, I did like the camera a lot. And I think it's very similar to Silent Hill 1's camera in the fact that it's like it moves around with you, but
mm.
it still feels fixed. Despite the
Yeah.
fact it's in the definition of the term a third person camera, it feels in nature very, very fixed. And sure, there are some camera angles where they are actually fixed and just kind of move or pan left and right or whatever. But
Mm,
even walking around the town, maybe it's just tank controls, but it almost feels cinematic in a way that most games
mm,
don't achieve nowadays either, because you have so much control. Um, what's a good reference for here? Like Spider-Man. Spider-Man is
mm.
like built to look like a film in a lot of ways. Like it's built to look like a Spider-Man film, and just the combat looks amazing and the character models and everything. But the camera is so focused on where you're moving it as a stick that someone watching it and not playing it, you wouldn't be like, oh, that looks like the new Spider-Man
Yeah.
movie or whatever. It doesn't have that
Mm,
effect. Whereas I feel like a modern Silent Hill with this camera, you could kind of make the argument certain scenes look filmic
yeah.
in their approach to camera movement.
Absolutely.
And this could be something we kind of talk about, especially with regards to just gameplay and item placement and that kind of thing. Resident Evil 1 to me nothing felt intentful. It was kind of things are placed in rooms in order to get you to go. Things are placed in a way to lock off certain areas until end of the game. So
Mm,
they're intentful in that regard in a
right.
progressionary sense. But
But they don't fit into the game
yeah,
world.
they're
Mm,
not artful, right? Like
mm,
when you talk about like a movie with good direction, it's the director wanted everything is the way the director wanted it, down to the character design, to the costumes, to the way the camera moves. Resident Evil 1 never feels like it has that kind of direction. Silent Hill 1 though does.
mm.
I think especially like I think the school's the best example. Like going from that's technically your first big transition from
Yeah.
real world to I don't know,
The other world.
other world.
Mm,
And you can definitely notice it there, like the room with the phone and how you kind of it's positioned in a way that you have to go around the table first. You kind of pick some stuff
mm,
up on the ground, and then you click the phone. Nothing happens. Look around the room a little more, and by the time you've navigated through the room, you've kind of your brain has almost forgotten about the phone already.
yeah.
And then you go to the door, and boom, it rings.
Mm,
Um, and so a lot of that is very direction driven in a way that I think Kojima does well as well.
mm.
Like you can tell that someone, maybe not the director of the game, but someone was like, it needs to be this way to feel this way.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that for sure. Yeah, I mean, I never thought of it that way, but yeah, there's a lot of things directing you towards certain event
Yeah.
triggers in a way, like with the phone or like with the cat that's in the locker. There's a
Hmm.
lot of stuff that kind of pushes you, funnels you through an area sets up a false scare and then delivers the real one later
Yeah.
once you've gained your confidence from the false one or
Yeah.
something.
And you can kind of even apply that, I think, to just the way the game guides you overall. There's a sense of direction in this game that like Resident Evil 1 doesn't have, but like Resident Evil 1 also, if you added like mission markers to Resident Evil 1, that wouldn't fix the issues with Resident Evil 1. I think it's just they put things in there thinking about how it was going to affect your way through the mansion. And certainly that's much harder to do when you're stuck in a mansion and you have to gate things like that. But Silent Hill 1 is how do I put this? The way it guides you, it feels real. Like I wouldn't Resident Evil 1 never feels believable in the way the mansion, like no one is going to build a mansion like this in real life to be like this.
I see.
To
Okay,
like
yeah.
there's never going to be a shark tank underneath a guardhouse, underneath a waterfall, underneath a $1 billion mansion, underneath a
Yeah.
$1 trillion laboratory. And so even though Silent Hill 1 is much more paranatural, it feels a lot more real to me than
Yeah.
Resident Evil 1
Yeah,
could
for
ever
sure.
feel.
Well, what I like about survival horror games in general is they tend to take place in like contemporary, recognizable locations, a city or a creepy mansion or whatever. But with Silent Hill, all of this stuff within the game that you're doing in a gameplay sense fits into the game world. The reason why the monsters are there, stuff that Alessa was scared of as a child, or elements of her internal torture, essentially.
Yeah.
You're in a school. You might be able to find chemicals like muriatic acid or something in a lock box somewhere or something like that. Or it's believable that there would be a creepy room that people don't like going in a school that's kind of closed and creepy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
And then like Resident Evil 1, for example, off the top of my head, I can think of the tiger puzzle. Not really puzzle, the tiger
With the
item.
jewels in
Yeah,
his
with the
eyes.
jewels. Like you have to go find these gems, these priceless gems hidden in this mansion to go put them in a tiger statue to get a gun from behind the statue. Like that's stupid. No one that's not how real life works. No one makes a room like that. And maybe there's a lore reason, like Spencer is, crazy or whatever. I don't care about the lore in Resident Evil 1 because there is no lore in Resident Evil 1 beyond like 3 notes that the architect left, and in fact, maybe even there my brain goes to all the lore the game has, I think, from the remake. And I think like in Resident Evil 1, the original, there was like nothing. There was no like very, very few pamphlets and like lore bits anywhere, I think.
It
Do you
was
even
more
find,
like
is Umbrella even mentioned in
Yeah,
R1?
yeah.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, they are mentioned. It's less lore and more world building, I
Yeah.
would say. So, a guy turning into a zombie and he documents the process
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily give you an insight into the story of the game, but it's all world building. Whereas with Silent Hill, the gameplay mechanics and the lore kind of go hand in hand with each other, which makes sense. If you're making a game after Resident Evil 1, you have the benefit of, having seen things that they may not have done as well
Yeah.
and trying to capitalize on that.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I think the resounding note I have from playing this is that like you can tell that they learned from the mistakes of games prior and were able to achieve a similar goal much better just due to the fact that people had tried other stuff before and that didn't work as well as so it just left, well, there's only one other way to do this, so I guess that's the way we have to do it to make it effective. I have a lot of notes here that make no sense to me now that I'm reading them.
Oh, good.
I have one note, my sixth thing I wrote. This is the note. Are you ready? This is a big one.
Let's hear it.
In quotes, Harry Mason.
That's the note.
I wrote his name down like halfway through the game. I'm
That's
just
a
like,
solid note, dude.
Harry Mason. I
My
don't know,
man.
like I don't know if they said his name finally or what, but I was like, oh, Harry Mason. Okay, okay, yeah, okay. So I have this first note that I kind of don't want to mention either because I feel like I'm gonna get made fun of this one, especially from you and all the old heads in the Avalanche Reviews Discord. I'm gonna hate me for this.
Hell yeah. Good.
I thought when I loaded this game up and the theme started playing, or the cinematic thing started playing,
Mm.
I thought that song was from Left 4 Dead.
Interesting. Really?
I did not know. Yeah, I've heard it many times, like just in I don't know, memes or videos or whatever. I
Yeah.
never pinned it to Silent Hill. I was like, this is the Left 4 Dead theme, and I'm like, no, wait, no, it isn't. And I guess I never put that together for some reason. It certainly sounds a lot like Left 4 Dead and just the like instrumentation overall, but like it's nothing alike in melody or anything. But yeah, that was weird because I launched it and that played and I'm like, I don't even. Also, while we're on this, before I forget, because I don't have a note on this, the opening, what would you call it? Like the start cinematic, whatever, when you launch the game.
Yeah, the intro cinematic.
Happens every time you launch the game. I think they just literally took every single cinematic from the game except the last one that would have way too many spoilers and just made a video out of it. There's
I think there's two clips in there that are unique to just the intro.
Oh, really?
Or
I
maybe
didn't even
it's
know
just
that.
One.
Well, there's the one
with Harry in front of the house with his wife and stuff.
No, because I think that happens later on as like a flashback.
Oh, it does? Okay.
I think. I'm not 100% sure on that. I know the one where they're driving, the cop and Harry are driving, and I guess you could argue happens like after the story is done or whatever. That doesn't appear in game. Maybe it happens after the credits and I just didn't realize it. I don't really know.
I don't
But
think it
like,
does.
yeah, that was funny to me as I was playing the game. I expected it because it's only like a minute long, maybe.
Yeah.
But it has like 5 seconds of every single cutscene in the game.
So there's an interesting reason for that, though. The guy who made the CG cutscenes was not in charge of CG cutscenes for the game, technically.
Yeah.
And he wanted to prove himself to the higher ups. So he, this Team Silent, the group that made this game, were kind of renegades and rebels that didn't work well with other people in Konami. So they put them all in a group and they said, clone Resident Evil. And they didn't ask for any updates and they gave them access to the bank and that was about it. So this guy goes, hey, can I do like the CG cutscenes? And they're like, you're a story event planner or whatever it is your job is. And he goes, no, I'll still do that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to, on the side, render out these CG cutscenes. And as I do it, I will teach this team how to do it. And that'll be, why you let me do it, because I'll also be this teacher. And he would wait until everybody had left for the night and he would render on everybody else's workstations frames of these CG cutscenes.
Yeah.
So everything you're seeing in there is like this man's blood, sweat, and tears. And he had to kind of make it all work. So he crushed them together for an intro.
I mean, to be fair, when you're playing through the game, the cutscenes are very good, I think, for the time. Not even just in like fidelity, which the fact that it was like one guy mainly doing most of that, at least in direction and how everything kind of ended up, like it's very good in that regard. But just, I mean, the voice acting is not amazing, but like compared to most other games, even like Metal Gear Solid 1 has very good voice acting, but except for that, this is like a top 5 contender, I'd say, at least in all the games I've watched or seen from that era, where like it's believable at the very least. Jill is not believable in RE1.
How dare you?
Barry's okay. I like Barry. But that's also because he's just like funny old guy, so like he doesn't need to be very dynamic or anything. He's like, Jill, what's going on in here? And that's fine for him because that's his character. But Jill would like see the big snake and she would just be silent or be like, oh, and that'd be it. And so, especially Harry too. Harry has a lot of remarks he just makes to himself that
Mm,
aren't like just his internal thinking, which
yeah.
I think maybe they could have done more of in like a more modern game. Like if you
Yeah.
play something nowadays, all the characters are quipping all the time.
Of
Like God of
course.
War is the worst example of that, where like every character is talking, even if it has nothing. Even if they have nothing to say, they are talking.
Yeah.
Um, and this is I think is close to that perfect balance where Harry's just like if something really weird happens, he will talk about it, and you'll get his internal viewpoint, which is nice because it doesn't feel like it feels more filmic in the sense that you're watching a character. They're not trying to
Mm,
make you the character. Harry Mason is his own person.
yeah.
And I do like a lot of the things that Harry will say that he would say out loud, like a remark if something scary happens, like, "Oh, what just happened?" that you would say out loud, literally.
Mm,
The actor does speak, and then something that he's thinking that you wouldn't say, like, "I wonder where to go next," kind of thing, doesn't have voice over it. It's just text,
mm,
which is like a
yeah.
great distinction. That I mean, like it completely just random kind of choice there that like could have done it one way or the other and I wouldn't have said anything. But the fact that they like perfectly decided which ones are which, and the fact that that's
Mm,
there at all, I think is great.
yeah.
It goes into that filmic kind of sense that this game has that a lot of games, even today, don't.
They took a lot of inspiration from cinema. I
Yeah.
mean, there is just paragraphs of inspiration material that's been just, you know, confirmed by Team Silent. And
Hmm.
it's like 75% movies and 30% books or
Yeah.
something.
Another thing I like to mention is something that we kind of touched on earlier, talking about the camera, and that's the camera as a plot device, where
Mm,
this you feel like an observer for a lot of the game, and a lot of it's down to the camera, but a lot of it's down to just the fact that Harry is his own character outside of the player and what the player makes him do,
mm,
and also just the fact that it's all of these elements mixed together that make something that even though you have control of Harry, it still kind of feels like you're watching someone do it, not like you're doing it,
mm,
which is kind of the opposite emotion that most games want to provide. They want you to feel immersed. They want you to be the character. Like a lot of RPGs that is like the Skyrim is like that was probably
yeah.
written on a whiteboard somewhere in big black letters. But like this game takes a lot of that away from you, which
Mm.
is interesting in a modern context.
I like that you mentioned that because that's always been what I prefer in a video game is
Yeah.
for a writer to build a character for me and for me to experience them like Saga Anderson
Hmm.
and Alan Wake 2. Great character. I did not want any input on how she conducted her affairs at
Yeah.
all outside of like combat and
Yeah.
exploration. I wanted her
Enough
to
to
be a
have a game.
fully, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just wanted her to be a fully fleshed out character and I wanted to be taken along on a story as opposed to building one myself with multiple choices and dialogue options and stuff. So that's always been a preference for me. So survival horror is really good about that.
Yeah. No, I think it's easy to do one, or maybe not easy. In fact, it's probably harder to do one way or the other, but I think it's better when you either have a very strong character that is clearly not the player, you're just playing as them, or the complete opposite, which is total control of your character to build your own character that
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate 3 is really good at. But then you
Mm,
get a lot of in between where
yeah.
you can make choices, but they're not your choices really. They're the character's choices. I played a
Mm,
game recently that did that, and I can't quite remember. Oh yeah, Yakuza. Yakuza does
mm,
that a lot. Kiryu is his own character. He has his own goals and his very distinct personality, and yet whenever like a random mob guy on the street comes up, or whenever you're in a lot of minute to minute interactions, they have dialogue choices.
mm,
And usually it's a one very clear, this is what Kazuma Kiryu would say right now. And then the other option is, this is what Kazuma Kiryu would say if he was an asshole. Like, I'm never going to pick that one, because this is the character, and this other one is just a choice you've given me to give me a choice. And
The
that could be,
illusion of choice.
yeah, that could be translation, could be localization. I don't know. But that's certainly what it felt like, was like, we're giving you options. And I don't care that it's an illusion of a choice, because a lot of games do that. And you don't necessarily need your dialogue to actually affect things to make it feel like you have your own character. Because you can say the same thing in different ways, and it could still be deeper than the BioWare, are you going to be nice or are you going to be an asshole? That no one's going to pick the asshole route. I don't like, why would
I never do.
It's stupid
I can
evil
never be
stuff.
yeah.
It's
I
not,
can't
it's,
do the evil runs. I don't know why.
It would be different maybe if it was like good evil dialogue, but it's like, usually when someone's evil, they have a reason for it. And a lot of the BioWare traps that they fall in is that they don't have a reason. They're just asshole choice or normal choice. Not like a lot of things. I'm not going to talk about this too much, but like Mass Effect, a lot of the gripes I had with it were that your character would, when you were picking the evil choices, there would be a reason for it. Like, I can think there's a character in, I think, 3 that like shooting them is a renegade option to shoot them, but like my shepherd in that moment would shoot them, and so it made sense to click the renegade action button and have them shoot the character. But then as soon as the cutscene's done, my character was just racist. Because like I shot him because he was an Asari or whatever. I'm like, that's not I didn't want that. That's not why I shot him. And so it's the comically evil thing where like my character's either normal person this is how they would act, or they're like Hitler number 2, and that's not an option. That's just like, I guess you could argue it's like maybe that's the route you go down when you play it a second time, but like, I don't know. That's not what I'm going to the game for. And Silent Hill, thankfully, doesn't do any of that. It's very, like I said, it's directed in a sense that a lot of games aren't. One thing I mentioned in my notes that I think it maybe comes down to the slasher like kitschiness of this game that maybe they pulled from in their film references, that like Harry comes to this town, he walks in, passes out, cop wakes him up, and then he's like, I need a gun. And the cop is like, here's my gun, and then walks
Very
away.
American.
Like, what? No, that's
They're just giving them out.
Yeah. And I mean, like, if Sybil was like, according to her at least, in this town for a little while, trying to see what's going wrong, and so she probably understands that, hey, if I don't give this guy a gun, he's gonna die. And so I could be like, that's kind of understandable. Like Resident Evil 7, very early on, you're talking to the window through the cop, and Ethan's like, this guy's literally trying to kill me. You were locked out of this house. Give me your gun. I will defend myself with it. And the cop's like, no, I don't care. And then he dies instantly or whatever. But if you did something like that, where Sybil's like, I'm not gonna look. I know, I'm not supposed to do this, but there are these goblin creatures outside the door with these baby demons with knives everywhere. Yeah. I'll give you something. Would be much more believable than just, well, I'm gonna leave town, so here's my gun. I'm just gonna walk out of here unarmed, where you could just shoot me in the back for fun or whatever. You could be psychotic, whatever. It doesn't matter. She was very quick to trust there, but it didn't feel wrong. If it was like funny, but like it was like very slasher film dumb in a way that matched the cutscenes, I think, to a certain extent. Let me go through my notes here. Okay, this is a note I had. Maybe you can speak a lot to this about the other games in the series, but this game really forces you to use real world objects. Like I was writing on my phone a bunch of notes. I had pen and paper. I wrote a bunch of things. I know how to play piano a little bit, but like I don't have the instant recognition. So like I pulled up like a piano chart of notes and stuff like that. It makes you pull a lot of things in real life to kind of figure out things in the game,
Yes.
which almost never, back to the case board in Alan Wake 2, where it's just like it's spoon feeding you all this stuff. You don't actually need to think about anything in a lot of these games. This game expects you to do that a lot. And is that like a Silent Hill staple to you? Is in fact my question I'm much more interested in actually is is that a reason why you think Silent Hill is so good? Because it expects that. It doesn't treat the player, it doesn't treat the bare minimum player. It treats you as you have to reach me on my ground, not the other way around.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements that continue in the series in that direction, which is good. One of my big examples is you have to know your directions. You know, they'll be like, yeah, it's on the corner of whatever and whatever, and you have to physically go. There's no marker. I mean, sometimes there is. You know, every once in a while, Harry will circle something.
But also, when he does that, it's like when the character says, "This is where it is," and then you, in that situation, would literally take out your map and draw circles. Like he would be stupid not to, in a sense.
I love that Silent Hill map is just perfect. It's perfect. As you check doors, he's Xing them off. I mean, so good. It's so much. Once again, it's one of those things that fits into the game world as well as your world.
Yeah.
But yeah, the drawing from knowledge of real life stuff kind of lends to the groundedness of Silent Hill in a way. Silent Hill, like we were talking about before, it's even though it's more paranormal than Resident Evil, it seems way more plausible.
Yeah.
And that does continue, although I will say that they start having to draw for more and more esoteric stuff. And by the time you're in Silent Hill 3, they expect you to know the tarot cards and have those memorized, which is fun.
Yeah. But I mean, like, even that, maybe not when it came out originally, but now at least you could research that and pull it up on a web browser or your phone or whatever. And so even though it might expect you to know more things that no average person is actually going to know, unless you're a tarot card kind of person, then you'd know, but like not many people are that kind of person. You still have availability to get that knowledge fairly easily.
Yeah.
Which segues us into the next thought I just had while you were talking about that, where the groundedness, I think, in this game helps a lot. What helps it a lot is the writing down notes to save, which first of all, I love. I love when there is an in-game action that the character takes to save, like Metal Gear Solid's codec and Resident Evil typewriters, and
with Parasite Eve, I would call the precinct and check in with them.
Yeah.
So
Alan Wake 2 does it pretty well too, where like it's not exactly the same, but like you go to a break room and you sit down, have some coffee. That's where the game ends, or that's where like your save is. That's where you exit, kind of thing. So I really like that. I think that helps a lot in the groundedness of it. And a lot of the other things about Silent Hill that kind of push you along on the path where they're guiding you without you knowing, leans on that sort of I don't know exactly how to put it, but it leans on the things you would use in that situation, like the map where you would circle things. Makes sense.
Yeah.
When you're leaving the hospital and the priest lady is like, you have to go to the other church I forget exactly what she says. She doesn't like name the antique store outright. She says something kind of general, and then you look through your inventory, you see keys to the antique place. That's the place to go. A lot of that where it's not spoon-fed, and it's requiring you to kind of understand what's going on, which I think maybe is a bad thing for a lot of games. I can think back to... have you played the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask?
Yeah.
Those games, I've beat neither of them. I'm getting a 3DS on Wednesday, so I'm gonna play them for the first time next week. I think that'll be fun. But I've played a little bit of them through the years. Anytime I play that game and I quit out, the next time I come back, I have no clue what is going on. And I think even Majora's Mask has a little thing where you can like ask what was happening.
Yeah,
but
like a diary kind of thing. Yeah.
But it never helped me enough that I would be able to pick it up and keep going.
Yeah.
I worry that Silent Hill might have that issue. I don't know. I played it in like 3. It's a very short game. It's like 7 hours is what I beat it in. So like it was like 3 sittings for me. So like it wasn't an issue there, but I think it could have that issue. Like,
you know, I think because it draws from so much survival horror gameplay tropes, it would be really easy to jump in and figure things back out because at worst you would just check all the doors.
Check all the doors, look at what's in your inventory.
Haven't been checked yet.
Yeah, and then keep going. Yeah, that's fair. I think maybe it might be a bigger issue further down the line when there's more doors to check and you know, things are more things in the environment and you know more things to contend with. That I could see that being a bigger issue. But yeah, you are right. This game is simple enough that I don't think you'll catch that issue, but it is an issue I could see happening to someone. My next 2 notes, amazing. Next note is just in quotes. This guy dresses like a doofus. What is he wearing? He has this
a pair of blue jeans and a jacket. That's doofus material.
Blue jeans. Okay, a blazer, like leather blazer, a vest, a black striped vest, and like this 80s kind of puffy dress shirt underneath it. What is he doing? This is terrible. Oh, no. Okay. To be fair, I guess it is a video game staple to have writers have terrible fashion sense. Alan Wake, what is he doing? What is he wearing?
Looking cool is what he's doing.
No, he looks like he went to a Target and he was like, "It's cold outside. I need some more layers. Got to work with what we have here in this men's
Sweater
section
vest.
of the Target," kind of thing. And it looks so dumb. But thankfully, Silent Hill 1 is so low res that you cannot see very well anyway. But also, I don't know for you, because you grew up with this. I forget the name for it. I knew what the name was called. But the Silent Hill does the thing where it's like all the pixels are not wobbly. They're not like Metal Gear 1 wobbly. They're like, I don't even know how to describe it. There's like these
texture warping.
Yeah, it's like the each pixel has like a T shape that like moves in from to the outside on each pixel and kind of fades back in and out. That was really annoying to me.
Dithering.
Dithering, yes, you're right. Yes, dithering was really annoying to me the first couple hours because when you're outside. The fog doesn't have any dithering.
Heavy dithering, yeah.
But everything else
is
blasted with it. And so my eyes drift to the fog where I can't see anything. And it's just like a blanket of gray. And when what I actually need to see is like the enemy in front of me or the door or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's fine inside because the whole screen is like that. And so your eyes just kind of unfocus a little bit.
Yeah.
But outside, it really doesn't have a good look.
Yeah, I could see that. Dithering is a comfort to me now. I don't think you could really call it a legitimate. It was a graphical trick, and it was made to blend in with CRTs that were so shitty at the time, and the phosphorus glow would sort of blend these things together, and they did a really good job at that because they were able to achieve. Half transparencies by just taking every other pixel and blanking them out. It's just fucking genius. It's really smart. Nowadays, it's like seeing PS1's affine texture warping. It's not a good thing, but it's something I've grown to love. But when people say they hate it, I'm like, I 100% get it.
No, I don't, and I don't necessarily hate it. I just think that the implementation here could have been fixed by just doing it on the whole screen. If you're doing it to save resources on
Mm.
the graphics in the world, that's fine. You don't need to do it on the fog. It's just like a PNG or a texture or whatever. That's not going to take up much hardware, like space. I don't know what I'm saying. Hardware usage or whatever. But it's the issue that half of the screen has it and half of it doesn't. And maybe that's fixed on a CRT. I don't know. I have a very shitty CRT that I want to load it up maybe and see on. But I'm playing on like a 65-inch OLED
Yeah.
Samsung TV where it is not helping at all. And actually, the PS3, I played this on my PS3 with the not eShop. What's it called? PlayStation Store. They don't have a
The
name for it.
PSN.
Yeah, PSN. Thank you. Yeah, the PSN copy of it, just like emulation on the hardware, and it has a smoothing option on it that looks like dog in every single other game. I had to turn it on for the beginning of this game because my eyes couldn't focus, and it makes it look worse, but it smooths it out just enough that you're not focusing on what's clearer than what's not.
Yeah, I get that.
Is that ever something you have had to contend with in these older games? Like, because you play a lot of old games on new screens, but you also have a bunch of tech to kind of reduce the brick wall against a brick wall that is analog, meant for very, very bad TVs of the past, that you're on a pixel perfect monitor. You have a lot of tech to wage that gap. Do you think is that like if I played this with like a RetroTink 4K or whatever, is it going to make it better? Like what is your
I would
view on
say
that?
so. There are if you were to play it with like a Tink 5X or a Tink 4K, there are CRT masks that you can use that are really, really authentic looking. And if you're sitting, and for example, if you're sitting the right distance from a 65-inch TV, it's a CRT effectively.
Yeah.
So that could definitely help out for sure. But a lot of what I do with my upscaling stuff is in the direction of keeping all of the flaws. So upscaling pixel perfect with the dithering and allowing the dithering to show through because, this is such a dumb thing. When I used to look at game magazines back in the day, they would have the screenshots and they would take these really sharp screenshots. You could see the, pixel edges and everything. And that to me was always like, these are that's what's inside the consoles. And we're limited by these displays. And now that I can upscale, I consider that to be the true, image, even though that's not what you would have seen back then.
Yeah.
So like a lot of my pursuit is chasing down the dithering and seeing it exactly how it was. And I've learned to love it. I really do. But, like you said, I mean, it's genuinely, it can be an eyesore for most people, I assume.
I think maybe it could be, but I think it's just this game in particular. Like,
it's a very dithered game.
Metal Gear Solid 1, I played the same exact way. The PSN store version on my PS3 HDMI to a 4K TV, and it was fine. It wasn't annoying or it didn't make my eyes feel all weird, but it's just like the implementation in this one specifically. So maybe that's something I'll experience more as I play, Parasite Eve and all these other big titles of the time. But I think it's just a poor, maybe not even, I wouldn't say it's poor again, because this is for the time that was like, well, we're going to save resources doing it and you're not going to really notice it on a CRT.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's what they were making it for. They're not making it for me 25 years later playing it. They're making it for you playing it on your CRT at the time. So I can't blame them for that. It's just how it happens as a modern playthrough goes.
Yeah, for sure. Interestingly, the way the PS5 handles transparencies is very similar now too, where you have, but it's a cross-shaped dithering pattern, which is
could you say
weird how we've come back.
It's a cross circle squared shape pattern?
I would never say that.
No,
never in my life would I ever.
Whatever. I see what it is. In fact, I know you would never say it because it took you like 3 weeks to put the link out on Twitter that I sent you. Like you asked me like the day of that I started, and then I think you posted actually 14 days later.
That's a pretty good turnaround.
Actually,
for me
that's true. Yeah, no. Whenever I schedule with you, I just like, all right, next year we're doing this series.
Mm.
What month are you available? And we work down from there usually. Um, Another note I made was health drink. This bothered me way more than I think it should have. What is a health drink?
Okay, so here in Japan, we have these little tiny ampule-sized
Uh huh.
glass containers with a little like vitamin B12 or
Yeah.
vitamin C in it, and that's what they were
Okay. Yeah, no, that,
putting
I
through.
mean, first of all, we don't have that in America, and this is set in America. So come on, Team
Mm,
Silent, get a grip.
get your shit
But
together.
yeah,
Come on.
no, every time I would get one, it would just like, in my mind, it was just like Henry's going through, not Henry, Harry's going through this hospital. He's getting stabbed and beat up and not shot, but, hurt very bad. And then he's just down in
Towards the
energy
end, yeah, they
drinks.
got guns.
Just
Mhm.
down in energy drinks every 3
Yeah.
seconds is what it was in my head. And so he was kind of it was like Max Payne-esque in a way, where like this is just substance abuse by the end of it. The only way this guy's getting out of here. So I thought that was funny.
Mm.
Another thing I want to mention that I really like this game that does in the game affecting the real world and back and forth sense is that in order to tell when your health is low, the controller vibrates quicker based on your heartbeat,
Mm.
which is it makes perfect sense. Like that, as you're getting hurt, his heartbeat's going up. That is like the perfect avenue for displaying health information to the user. A lot of people
Yeah.
always talk about, I don't think Karlec mentioned this in his Dead Space video, but a lot of people talk about Dead Space and the thing on Isaac's
Yeah.
back being like, this is great, it's in world. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool that it's in game, but that is literally no different than a health bar in practice. This, on the other hand, it is different. You don't need to check anything. You just sense when you have low health,
Yeah.
which is great. It doesn't break your immersion like going into menu or anything to having to check it.
Yeah.
Which also, the menu in this game, so ugly. What were they doing?
Yeah, it definitely is like a black void with your items just rotating in a
Yeah,
circle.
and there's like these non-transparent buttons that are like a really poorly, or like really low resolution texture, and there's just the buttons, and then the items with like a green outline around the the frame, the 1x1 frame of the item, and then a photo of this dude in the corner, and that is everything. And Resident Evil 1 has a bad looking menu from today's standards, but it's not that bad. This menu, come on.
I feel like Resident Evil 1's menu looked more like a PDA of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense. I really like Stalker's menu. That is literally a PDA. And even though it's like not great technically, like it doesn't look exactly like how a PDA would, but it's a step up from whatever this is. That was the immersion breaking thing for me.
Interesting.
As we talk about like how cohesive this game is in making you there's nothing there's no harsh corners to most of this game. The menu was the one thing that kind of stuck out to me as like every time partly because it takes a long time to activate the menu. Like when you press the button, goes through all the animation, you have to stop. All that was part of it, sure, but that was the only thing that really took me out, to me at least.
Interesting. I have a complaint about the menu too, but it's not so much the look of it, but the layout, the horizontal layout for the items. Once you get to the end game, you're having to scroll for a long time to get this stuff.
Yeah, especially in Nowhere, you have like multiple keys, multiple items. And by that time, you have like 4 guns, 4 melee weapons, all the ammo, all the healing items. There's like 23, 24 things in particular that you can't see all at the same time. And maybe actually it would be worse with a grid menu because you would just have 24 little tiny items all over the screen, but it's also not good to have to scroll for like 3 seconds just to get to your healing item or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. I have some stupid notes for this. I need to up my note game. Um, another thing I want to mention. There's a lot of bokeh and lens flare with a
Mm,
camera. And when
yeah.
we're talking about the camera being in the world, that is another great touch I like that I don't think Resident Evil does at all ever.
No.
Um, that and that in fact it kind of was so good that it like blew me away when I first saw it. I'm like what? There! Oh my god, that's so cool! And I was like,
Yeah.
and then my brain went, yeah, this is cool for a video game, and then kind of took me out of it.
Yeah.
But it is cool. I like it.
Yeah. It's
Um,
super cool.
let's see. I don't have very good notes for this game. In fact, actually, I want to ask you because
Mm.
are you a Silent Hill loreologist? Would you put yourself in that camp, or are you
I would say I'm an amateur
amateur?
lorologist.
Okay,
Mm.
which is a term I just made up, and
Yeah, it's
that we're
good.
going to use forever now. Actually,
We'll continue. Yeah.
the here's a big question I have beating the end of the game.
Mm.
I just said two synonyms next to each other. Beating this game.
Yeah.
Uh, is Alessa Cheryl? Are they the same person?
Yes.
Is that what we were trying to get out of this? Okay,
Yeah.
because that's what I like. I noticed it first in Nowhere when they outright mention like I forget if it's when she's like in the hospital bed and they're talking about torturing her or whatever to get her
Yes.
power. They're like, or maybe in the cutscene right after where they're like, when she disappears from Silent Hill, she's like 6 or 7, and then at one point in the game, Harry's like, we found this girl on the side of the road at 6 or 7. So that was like, okay, I think this is Alessa. But then at the end of the game, Harry walks out with a new baby,
Mhm.
which is also Cheryl. But
Yeah.
the priest lady is like, you were fooled. This was never Cheryl. This is actually Alessa. But in the entire first half of the game, there was like, that's Alessa taking over Cheryl. And then it's, no, that's actually not Cheryl at all. This is Alessa. And then at the end of the game, Harry walks out with a completely different kid, technically.
Okay, so I could explain it to you, but it might ruin a bit of the allure of the story.
Well, I want to know.
Okay, good, good. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a subject I love talking about. So you can, your first surface level casual playthrough of Silent Hill leads into what everything you just said. And it was the
Yeah.
same for me and everybody else who plays it. When you go through and play it a second time, or if when you play it the first time, you're aware of this. If you read into every note and there's an event you can unlock with Kaufman in another part of town that will give you a lot more context as well and give you the good ending. So what happened was,
Well, no, I think I got the good ending.
okay,
I
so
did
you
the
got
side
the baby,
quest.
and oh, you did. Okay, so
Yeah.
you unlocked that thing with Kaufman, the motorcycle.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right,
yeah.
perfect.
Okay.
Okay, good. So what happened is this cult is looking to birth their god into the real world.
Yeah.
And to do it, they need to have it actually be impregnated into Alessa.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the process of impregnating her, this seance ritual thing that they did, because Alessa has psychic powers, and that's why she would make a good vessel for this god.
Okay. Yeah.
During the process, she was so messed up with it. You know, it was hurting her so bad, and she was in so much torment that her psychic energy or whatever caused the boiler in the house to explode. The fire happens. Now, they're able to get Alessa out, but she has like 3rd-degree burns over all of her body.
Yeah.
And they're keeping her alive through like occult means. And that is awful for her because she's living in this hell.
Yeah.
So what she does is because she knows that if she's not a complete whole thing, that they can't give birth to this god. So she splits herself and
Okay.
she takes half of herself essentially out somewhere else. That's Cheryl.
Okay.
When Cheryl comes into Silent Hill and the two of them come into close proximity with each other, neither of them can help being absorbed into the whole. And as Cheryl is trying to keep that from happening, she's kind of escaping from her hell. And in doing so, she's bringing it with her.
Yeah.
So all the stuff you're experiencing is all the torment that she's going through it's coming out with her, and it's not on purpose. She's not, doing it to hurt anybody.
Mm-hmm.
When they come together at the end, the god is actually physically born, and the last thing that Cheryl can do, the last bit of her power, is take a portion of herself so that Harry doesn't lose his only daughter.
Yeah.
And that's the baby, and that's why
Okay.
it's a tiny child, is because
Yeah.
that's all she has left
Yeah.
is this.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, and that's what my mind was leading to. I just feel like there's the ending doesn't give you enough to confirm that is what happened. It's kind of it's left up to interpretation, but it like almost too much interpretation for like a first time playthrough. That
Yes.
I like, I'm sure if I played it a bunch and absorbed some of the reading around the game and everything, that I would get to that conclusion. It just it didn't hit it hard enough for the first time for me.
Yeah, for sure. And knowing what you know now at the end, going back and watching certain cutscenes and interactions, you'll have a lot more context, and you'll be able to put together a lot more of the story.
Yeah. And actually, the one thing you mentioned during that explanation was the fact that, and I did pick up on this, that like the things that are happening to Harry are not like him entering a dream state necessarily, and the things that are happening to this town and everything. They're actually the things happening to a different character, which is like another thing that is not usually what a game would do. When something happens in a game and it's important, it's usually tried to be pinned to the main character. Like, this is a representation of the character's guilt, or which I think like Spec Ops: The Line kind of does, or this is like this character killed a bunch of people, and now this is his past coming back to haunt him, which is like the Metal Gear 3, the fear kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's always the character is the playable character is the most important person. And a thing I like that this game does very well is that Harry is both just some guy in a gameplay sense, because he's not like a Navy SEAL combat wise or anything, but just in terms of the story, he's a side character. He is not.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
There's a very good argument for Alessa/Cheryl being the main character of the game.
And sure, he's probably the main character in the sense that like the game wouldn't have played out the same way if he wasn't there, because he's kind of the impetus for the ending and making it able to happen. But the actual main players here are really Cheryl, Alessa, and the crazy priest lady that are kind of
Dahlia.
Yeah, Dahlia. That they're really what this game is about, and you don't really even know that until the last cutscene. You mentioned it, I think, on our Alan Wake 2 episode, that like half of this game is misdirection. I don't think that. I actually disagree with that. I think this game is just vague until the end. I don't think it's misdirecting you.
Well, Dahlia misdirects you. when she
Dahlia
tells you-
does, but I also never really trusted her. So I never fully believed what she was saying, and everything she said I took with a grain of salt. So like, while she was this, she was the kind of the driving force for explaining things, quote unquote, I never took it as the truth. So to me, it wasn't misdirection. Her character was misdirecting Harry, but I never took what she was saying as the reality of what was happening here. In fact, at
There's
points,
a few red herrings as well, though.
Okay.
There's the drug trade that the cult was involved in. That,
Yeah.
for at least for me, in my interpretation of my first playthrough, I was like, okay, maybe this psychedelic drug explains a lot of this video game, right?
I could see how you could get to that. To me, it was that my early hypothesis was that's why this is happening to the town, is like the town itself is fighting back, because all the people in it are these terrible people who are doing all this crime and luring in tourists and getting them addicted and selling all this. It's like that was an early hypothesis, but you could kind of argue still that like that is what's happening in a sense. That I don't know, is it untrue that Silent Hill was this like drug manufacturing criminal den, or is that just completely false?
No, it is true. That's how
Okay,
the
yeah.
cult financed their
Yeah,
operations.
so like you could argue that all these things happening to Cheryl or Alessa and the events leading up to the town being abandoned and this hellscape are due to their past transgressions. So it never,
There's a really cool history to it actually. So Silent Hill, famous resort town. Everybody loved it.
which I did not get for many hours. I wrote a note. Why the hell is Harry visiting Silent Hill? This is like this looks like some crappy old town where like some old coal miner town. There's nothing here,
Mm.
and I didn't like. And then there's a resort and an amusement park, and that never made sense to me. But yeah, that was an issue I had.
Yeah, so it is a resort town, and there is spiritual power that emanates from Toluca Lake,
Uh-huh.
which makes the town very, very special. And this cult is they understand that this spiritual power exists, and this is how they tap into it and allow Alessa to become impregnated with a god that doesn't exist in reality.
Yeah.
And she's going to birth it into reality using this power source
Mhm.
essentially. So this was a resort town that already was kind of weird, and then there was a bunch of boating accidents that gave it a really bad name, and the town just died
Yeah.
essentially. So the drug trade
Poor
was
Harry. Why is
there,
he
and
taking his daughter here?
it's there's a lot that is left up to interpretation in Silent Hill. A lot of small stuff like the time frame or like what time it takes place in and
Yeah.
stuff is kind of up to interpretation, and that's one of them. Like what the hell is he doing going to Silent Hill? I mean,
Yeah,
it's long dead.
this long dead resort town where a bunch of people died and there's a drug
Mm,
trade. I guess he doesn't know about the drug trade technically, but
yeah.
like this doesn't like what is he looking up on like Bing and being like, "Wow, these photos from 20 years ago look great. We should take a trip here, Cheryl."
I feel like this might be my amateur lorologist
Hmm.
title speaking here, but
Yeah.
potentially he was just trying to drive through Silent Hill,
Okay. Yeah.
and it was Alessa, or I think that the
Well, no,
cult
because he
had some kind of
says
dealings.
we're on vacation. Like this, we
Oh,
came here
okay, all
for
right.
vacation. He says that to Sybil
Hmm.
when she's
All
like, "Why
right.
are you here?" I took me and my daughter were here for on vacation. So like he's
Mm,
maybe like something changed that like that he wasn't actually there originally for that. I don't know anything about that,
mm,
but that is at least the reasoning presented to the player is that like
yeah.
Harry figured this would be a great vacation
Mm,
at some point. Um, Another thing I want to mention here is that we talk about the dream sequence uh, nature to a lot of this game,
mm.
and I feel like at least in the reading or the writing on this game that I have seen, a lot of people kind of write it as this. Have you seen Boy and the Heron? The new
No, I have
Miyazaki one.
not.
Okay.
Mm,
People the whole thing around that movie is like this is like essentially it's not literally a dream, but like that is how the movie is meant to feel like nothing is meant to
mm,
feel like reality. Kind of things make no sense. They're it's, dream reasoning for stuff happening, that kind of thing. And a
yeah.
lot of people push that on this game, at least what I've seen is that
Mm,
Silent Hill it's dreamlike because it is that is the logic that the Silent Hill area follows in reality is dreamlike properties. Uh,
mm,
Playing through this, I don't think I agree. There's there's things that are dreamlike in nature, but as you're saying, the town is shifting because of something actually happening, and
yeah.
and so when you look at it from beating the game, nothing looking back on it feels dream sequence. Everything feels like it has a reason for
Mm,
happening. And while you're playing it, it certainly feels like that when you have no information. Uh,
yeah.
and maybe this is me just not having like read up enough about like what people maybe actually think about this game, but it feels like a lot of people are like, yeah, this like nails dream sequence. And I'm like,
Mm,
yeah, on the surface, sure, if you like played half the game, but everything everything makes sense. Like back to like it being paranatural but more real. Everything feels real,
Mm.
almost just with an expanded take on what is actually possible, like with magic
Yeah.
and
In
spiritualness. Yeah,
universe,
yeah,
there's an explanation
yeah.
for
It
just
it
about everything.
feels like it is an alternate world, but everything is of the alternate world, and so
Yeah.
like the Silent Hill universe, the things happening here aren't paranatural. Really,
Mm.
they're just the way the world works. Because like the cult is very uh, casual, almost about the fact that they're summoning this thing,
Yeah.
making a god. They're never like it's never mentioned in the notes like this is crazy or like it's just kind of understood like this is how this town works.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing.
It's interesting that you got that because people do tend to get, and I will say a lot of times when they talk about dream logic, it's more in the David Lynchian sense where
Yeah.
dialogue is not so much meant to be parsed logically, but
Hmm.
instead, how does that make you feel kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
There is one like actual confirmed dream sequence when you I think it's in the antique shop when you go into the back and Sybil's waiting for you and you just disappear out of reality. You're essentially pulled into a dream sequence for
Yeah.
exposition's sake. But yeah, other than that, I always found it to be like you said, and the drug thing that we brought up before, that's when it kind of grounded it for me when I played it for the first time as a teenager because you're dealing with all these spiritual things and there's the power and the psychics and stuff and a cult, and then you have a group of people who are using like a person who's high up in authority in the town to cover up their drug ring to finance their like
Yeah.
illicit dealings. And I'm like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah. Real
We're dealing with
life.
real stuff now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, no, it's a lot of what makes the dream sequence are just like the way things happen to you, but they're not dreamlike in their reasoning,
Yeah.
and that's why coming away from it, it didn't feel dreamlike to me, but it does
Hmm.
in the moment. Um, and particularly, there's a couple things where like they're nailing that dreamlike feel to it. Partly due to the just the graphical limitations, but when you go up to signs, a lot of signs are pretty small and you can't really make out what they say, and they have some text on it. And a lot of time they'll have text on the top, text on the bottom, and somewhere in the passage that is on this sign, Silent Hill is mentioned. And the only thing you can actually make out and read on the sign is Silent Hill, and everything else is just garbled.
Mm.
So, that is like a dream thing that is like perfectly captured in this, where like the
Yeah.
only the things that you're meant to see are what even exist in this world potentially.
Mm.
But it's in the hospital. I think there's a sign that was like just Silent Hill Hospital. It was like you can always. I don't know what it said. You can't really see, but it could have said something like you can always trust the care at Silent Hill Hospital. Literally, the only thing you can say is Silent Hill Hospital.
Mm.
So it does that kind of thing that I think leads to that conclusion of dream sequence feel. But to me, it's just it never. I don't know. Maybe I'm just viewing it wrong. Maybe
No, I don't think
I don't
so.
know. But that's one of the main differences I think I had felt playing this game that I've seen around the internet and the way the internet tends to feel about this game.
So now that you're in it,
Mhm.
you're in this now. You can't
Yeah,
get out.
yeah,
I can warn you ahead of time something you probably already had an inkling of that the Silent Hill community is out of their minds,
yeah,
absolutely insane.
yeah.
And on one end, I can understand what happens with it because it is a game that leaves a lot of elements up to interpretation,
Hmm.
but it is also a game that has a very concrete, written down story that is available in game. You can figure out almost everything that you need to know about the story
Yeah,
through playing the video game, reading files, listening to dialogue. You know, you may have to take a few leaps in reasoning or something, but everything is backed up by what's contained on the disc.
hmm
But because of its up to interpretation nature, and like you said, a lot of people assuming a dream logic type of deal, people tend to come to their own conclusions, and that becomes the reality for them,
Yeah.
and for a lot of people. And a lot of Silent Hill fans tend to take fan theorizing, which is fun and awesome. Because when I first played it, I got the bad ending where Harry is dead in the car from the crash,
Oh, okay.
and that
I didn't even
to
know that was
me
the bad
that
ending.
was it was great. The last boss fight fades out, and you're hearing a noise, and the noise keeps getting louder, and it's just Harry's head on the wheel,
Oh,
on
that's
the
so
horn.
sick.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
And to me, when I first finished it, the entire events of Silent Hill happened in Harry's mind the microsecond that his brain shut down.
Yeah.
And that explained a lot for me, which obviously is not the canon
Hmm.
story, but there are people online who have their version of that, and they have control over the Silent Hill wiki. So
Okay.
that's what
Okay.
we're left with.
Well, I'm
A
I'm
lot of the Silent Hill fans just make a lot of assumptions, and you can see why they would, and it's really fun to do it. And then they'll get online and argue with you, and you're like, "No, I mean, it says I could point to where it says it in
yeah.
the game." They're like, "You just,
No, I look forward to the comment section. First of all, you don't make many friends in these communities. Resident
I do
Evil
not."
people hate you. Silent Hill people hate you. Well,
Yeah, I'm good at that.
who likes you? No one.
No, I'm not a community guy.
Yeah, as you can tell by your Discord of people that
Yeah,
all
yeah.
the only thing bringing us together is giving you money and hating you.
I'll take it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
I'll
mean,
take
hey,
both.
you have a bunch of people willing to support your content, and
Mm.
if they hate you or not, they're still giving you money. So that's good for you. Uh,
Yeah.
one thing I do like to point out, being in the Alan Wake, I wouldn't say I'm in the Alan Wake fandom, but like I follow a lot of Alan Wake loreologists on Twitter, and something that community is very good at is having an open mind to
Mm.
possibilities, and people don't necessarily have. No one in the Alan Wake community is like, this. I figured it out. This is the story. This is Alan Wake's story. This is correct. Nothing else is right.
Mm.
Or nothing else is right. This is the canon.
Yeah.
Like what really happens. No one is really like that. Everyone's kind of trying to solve the mystery together, and they're producing theories, and you'll see on posts people will just discuss the theories like it's some like high scholar class in college where like you have a bunch of old
Yeah.
professors discussing the nature of reality or something.
Mm.
It kind of gives that sense where I've seen, especially in your comments on Silent Hill videos, where like people are like,
Yeah.
"No, you idiot, that's not right." Obviously, this thing I thought of last night at 3 a.m. is what Team Silent was intending,
Mm.
and that kind of, man, I wish it wasn't like that, because this game really rocks, and I want to uncover the things of this game, and I assume I will want to uncover the things of the prior games, but seeing that has kind of pushed me away from really caring about it past
Yeah.
doing this podcast with you and talking about your perspective. I don't want to talk to the randoms on social media about this, because they're a little violent about it in many ways. That
Yeah.
like I after playing Metal Gear, I'm big into the Metal Gear community. I follow a lot of people on there, and like they're kind of open in the same way. And Resident Evil, I don't think has enough lore that makes sense for anyone to care anymore. So like that's
Yeah.
out the window. So like all I'm left with is like Last of Us, that has no lore beyond the characters on screen. Resident Evil has nothing, and I have Alan Wake and Metal Gear, and that's all I got now. And I really wish Silent Hill could occupy that space, but I don't think it can.
Yeah. You and me both. I'm the same exact way, because it's a unifying thing, because we all share this love for this property, and we love it so much that we combed through the code of the video game in
Yeah.
order to get answers and stuff. I you know, I can be a bit of a firebrand, and when I do express
Really?
opinions, I oftentimes will do it in a way that's more aggressive than what would be
It
ideal.
doesn't seem like you. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm really coming clean here with my alter ego. But I would say just take everything you hear from a Silent Hill fan with a grain of salt, because for the most part, people just really want to share their ideas about Silent Hill. And because the game started, it was an interesting time. The internet was around, forums were around, and Silent Hill came out, and it was this huge mystery. And then immediately people started getting together and trying to crack this nut.
Yeah.
And eventually they did. And that community coming together, it remained as a part of the series. And it is still to this day, people love getting together and discussing Silent Hill lore. But
Literally
I
what we're
think,
doing right now.
right. I think at the time, forum culture and internet culture in general was incredibly toxic to
At the
people who
time?
are on.
Have
Yeah,
you been
well,
on Twitter?
people who are on Twitter today,
Yeah.
you have no idea. It was awful. But I think because the game started around that time, around that culture, and it sort of followed through. And now, if you're getting into Silent Hill and you're not Benny Gurkman, if you're a younger guy and then you get on the Silent Hill wiki or Silent Hill Twitter, you know, it's a war, and you tend to learn from those other people. And then when someone comes after, you know, you and says, wait, that's not true, you have to attack
Yeah.
them the same way that you've seen other people be
Yeah.
attacked. It's an unfortunate circumstance, but you know, it's a really fun series to get into, and it's very easy to just not listen to people who are assholes to you.
Yeah.
And
Which
you
is
know,
why I
even me,
only watch Avalanche Jared reviews on YouTube. That's the only person
it's
I'm
the only
subscribed to.
option.
It's
Well, there's like
the,
three
yeah.
channels on YouTube, and I'm
Yeah,
one.
you're one of them. You, Sphere Hunter, and what are they? What's that one live stream that like the AI generated Seinfeld? Those are your only options. Only
That was
options for
good.
good
Well,
content anymore. Whatever happened to this platform?
yeah, but Silent Hill is great, and the community can be just awful. But at the same time, you can find, I mean, there's awesome people who love and enjoy Silent Hill, and I think they're probably like us, a little less likely to reach out. But you know, if they see you talking about Silent Hill, it's like, hell yeah, dude,
Yeah.
thumbs up on
If
that.
you're one of those people and you're watching this video right now, put in quotes, hell yeah, thumbs up
There you go.
in the comments, so we'll know you're there. Um, another question I have for you. Okay, this is partly answered by your explanation of the lore, which has helped me a lot here, but the choice to have an amusement park just in design of the game, where this is near the climax of the game, you feel things coming to an end soon. You have like maybe, I don't know, nowhere takes like an hour at most, really 2 hours. So you're like last hour or two of the game here. You go through an amusement park, but and the characters are like, hey, we're going to this amusement park. You better be ready. You go in and there's nothing really of worth there. It's basically another street of Silent Hill, but the buildings are amusement park rides. And I feel like that was a lot of lost potential, to the point where I'm like, why is this even the setting of this area of the game? Like, nowhere makes sense. It's all the places of Silent Hill jumbled and everything's messed up. And the prior locations make sense because you're just making your way through the town, and that's where things happen to be in these like little core locations. Why an amusement park? And why is it not? I don't think it's used to its potential, because like an amusement park is creepy. Coffee World, which we talked about in Alan Wake 2, is like that is the way to do it. That is maybe the creepiest location in Alan Wake because of the setting. And here it's no more than set dressing. And I felt like that was kind of wasted a little bit.
Yeah. You know, honestly, I never noticed that. I mean, yeah, you're right. There's not a lot there aside from just having to run through it.
Yeah, no, and by that point, I was like, maybe the first few hours, I was shooting every enemy I came across. By that time, I was good enough with the controls that I could just run past everything and save my ammo. So literally, I was in the amusement park for 5 minutes, and the Sybil boss fight, when you use the liquid on her, that is over in 2 seconds. So
Yeah.
you're from the sewer to the amusement park to nowhere in like probably 5 minutes. And it's a big area too, with like
Mhm.
lots to sort of look at. Just the rides. There's a lot of rides and buildings
Yeah.
and things that
And
would
that's
be
all 3D.
interesting.
They had to model all of it.
Yeah, but you're there for like a second,
Yeah.
um, which kind of disappointed me. So like I don't know. Is there a reason why that is like to you subtextually or like looking at it from a lore point? Is there really any reason for that, or was that just kind of like,
I don't think
hey, we
so.
want this to be set in an amusement park, but we're actually maybe we have to focus on this other part of the game, so we're just gonna throw it in like a hallway and put it there.
If I had to guess, it would be between running out of time during development and having to use assets that have already been ready made,
Mm-hmm.
or they just needed another grounded real life location that would be in a resort town
Yeah,
for Harry to progress through in order to get to X location. Like you said, the sewers are essentially a straight line,
yeah.
but think of the sewers and the amusement park as sort of world building locations that
There's
ground the
set dressing.
area. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can understand that because like if they had like a third part of the town, I'd be kind of sick of it at that point because I'm like, we've already done this. We went to the old Silent Hill, then downtown Silent Hill, and now we're in the resort
And they're
area.
already going to reuse
Yeah,
locations later.
and,
So,
and so I'm like, a fourth part of Silent Hill where all the buildings kind of look the same is not interesting. So it is
mm.
more interesting in that regard, but it never like you could have done something cool there. Is all I'm trying to say with that. I think.
I will say that you get to go back there in Silent Hill 3, which
Oh,
is
okay,
nice. And there are puzzles there.
cool.
And
Okay.
there is
Trying to talk me
also a
into
boss fight.
trying to talk me into becoming a Silent Hill 3 fan already, and I haven't even played it.
I'm
That's
subtly hinting
yeah.
that
Okay.
you
Okay.
might want to.
Um, okay. Well, that is like most of my big notes here. So I want to start getting into takeaways here because I think you have the benefit of years upon years of not only thinking about this game like from a intellectual point of view, like what is this game about, what does it mean, kind of thing, but you also have the years and years of environment around the game to kind of guide you into what you think. So and I'm coming from the space where like I didn't know anything about this game. I knew Harry was the main character, and actually that's all I knew. That is literally the only thing about this game I knew. And I knew that you woke up in a car crash. I did know that. There was like the
Mm.
only two bits of information about this game I knew. So like my thoughts have been kind of my own conclusions completely. No one has guided them except this talk that we've just had. And I've only also, on the other hand, I've only had like 3 days to think about it. So I want to know your big takeaway and like what were Team Silent trying to say with this game? Like why make this other than just Konami needs money?
Well, for sure, the whole Team Silence, uh, them being created, fed into it because these are harshly creative people that were already sort of tuned towards not getting along with other people, not taking other people's ideas.
Yeah.
And I think when Konami said, "Here's a bunch of money, make us a Resident Evil," we're not going to check in on you. They said, well, okay, so for everything that happens in Resident Evil, let's have an analog there. And I think during the process of building that game, the guy who wrote the story loves cult stuff, super into cult stuff, super into old towns. So those two elements
Same.
were
Me
always
and
going to
him,
be
we could have a good
present.
chat. Me and him. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, I mean, because he went on to make the Siren games,
Hmm.
which a cult operating in an old town
Should
that you
I
have
should
to
I
go
play those?
through.
Are those? Should I put that on my
They
list?
are a tough play.
Okay.
They're
Okay.
very interesting and they're cool from if you appreciate elements of Silent Hill, but gameplay wise, they are a
Now
tough play.
I've had this idea in my head for a little while that doesn't really work as this channel is right now, but like at some point one day, if we have more fans than Avalanche Reviews Discord viewers and my grandma, um, and Jared, who puts our videos up like 6 weeks after they're out,
Mm.
it is like I want like a crowdsourced effort, because it has been maybe 6 years since a game has actually been scary to me.
Mm.
And I play a lot of horror games to chase that feeling, and I
Yeah.
can't find it at all. And I keep wanting to, like, I thought Silent Hill might have been that. I thought Alan Wake was going to do that. When I played Resident Evil 7 and 8, I really wanted that. I played what's the one where you have the camera? Your view is the camera.
Fatal Frame?
No. It's like a video. Outlast, not Outlast. Maybe it's Outlast. What's the other
No,
one
I
that's
think
just
you're
like
right.
Outlast?
I could have swore it was Outlast. It's like night vision, right?
Yeah, okay, maybe that's Outlast. I'm talking about Amnesia, which I don't think has a camera.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Okay, no, yeah,
Amnesia
it doesn't.
War of Pigs, I think, is the one I played. I played a few of these guys. I played a few horror games.
Oh, Machine
right?
of Pigs or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And they're all. I think the horror genre, and this can go into what I just cut you off about what this game means. I think the horror genre does try a lot of things intellectually that a lot of other genres don't, and so they're interesting to me in that regard. But I have not yet had a game that fundamentally scared me since like Ari Remake when I was like 11.
Yeah.
So and at the time I was 11, so obviously it was scary. And now that since I was like, I don't know, 14, nothing has actually scared me to the point like I miss it almost. Like my fondest childhood memory is me being scared shitless at a haunted house. And like, okay, that doesn't sound very fun, but I miss it. And I've been trying to chase that a lot with these games, and
I feel that struggle. No,
not
I'm right there with
doing
you.
it. So like if Siren is a game you think could achieve that, I can sit through any bad gameplay, bad voice acting, whatever. That is something I'm immensely interested in finding at some point, and maybe we will find it at some point through this podcast.
Well,
I don't know.
So you mentioned that very first section of Silent Hill, that sort of voyeuristic way the camera twisted and followed Harry. In Siren, there's a sight jacking system where it's essentially a stealth survival horror game, and what you will do is there are these like corrupted villagers walking around this village with like old farming implements and whatever. And what you do is you use the sight jacking system where you take their eyes and you try to find a path to where you're going without getting caught through using their vision as a guide. So it's
That
like a
sounds sick.
fourth person. It's
Yeah.
very interesting and it's super fun to engage with, but the way the game is laid out, our events are essentially randomized to a degree. Like not randomized, but they are randomly placed. They're not necessarily in a canonical order of any kind. So, you'll see a very interesting end to an event, and then those characters are present somewhere else. And you're like, I don't know if this is taking before or after what happened. It is frustrating as hell as far as the gameplay goes, but that voyeuristic feeling of viewing your own character through the enemy's eyes, and while it's happening, you see their animations, you hear them breathing or muttering to themselves. They've all essentially gone mad. It does give you that kind of feeling that you were describing, from what I can tell from Silent Hill 1. So that might be a potential one to chase down.
Definitely, yeah. I think the best example I have of something that worked really well, and it the euphoria I felt after I was like actually felt emotion for the first time in 10 years. It was the end of Metal Gear Solid 2. And I don't want to spoil it here, but like Psycho Mantis in Metal Gear Solid 1 is like well known. So maybe that would have hit if I like didn't know that it was coming. But also I played it with the Metal Gear Solid collection too, so like it didn't really work anyway with the way it's presented, where you go into the menu and change your controller ports and all that.
Yeah.
That didn't hit. But end of Metal Gear Solid 2, which I also equally walked into that game knowing absolutely nothing except you play as Raiden and I think that's really all I knew. He plays Raiden.
Yeah.
So I walking into it and then, going through the things that game does in retrospect to the first game, in the themes that it tries to pull, and the overall design of the game and its similarity, and the reasoning behind that, and all that, and then getting to the crux of like actually why that is at the end, like that I was like shivering almost. That was like, this is the best game ever made. Oh my god.
Some of the stuff Campbell says too, it's
Yeah.
freaky as hell.
Okay, this is gonna be a slight spoiler, very very slight. I don't think, if you don't know anything about Metal Gear Solid 2, I don't think this will actually ruin it. But there's a very during a very high emotion section, we'll say, during this climax of the game, Campbell, his head turns. You see the back of his head, and the only movement you ever see from any character in the codec up until that point is Liquid taking the sunglasses off when he's pretending as Miller. That is like, and Meryl like takes her like balaclava off in a codec call, like very very small stuff like that, and then just he calls you, and it's the back of his head. Oh my god, that was like, I was like on the floor, man. That was terrifying. And the best parts of Silent Hill are things that are trying to achieve that. And although this game isn't as meta as any Kojima game, like the bare minimum meta-ness that Kojima could possibly achieve with his brain is still like 50,000 times higher than the amount of meta that this game ever is. When it tries to do something that bucks the trend of just the medium and like art in as a whole, movies or music or whatever, the things that it tries to do there, which I think are born from trying to be different than Resident Evil in many senses, are my favorite parts of this game. And especially the because like the story itself is kind of, it's good, but it's like you can kind of tell where it's going by like once you're there, you're like, oh, that makes sense. It's not stereotypical, but it almost kind of feels like, oh, of course the girl is the same girl, and there's this cult kind of stereotypical horrorness of it. It's all the other stuff that scared me, and that's my big takeaway. Now that I've interrupted you in the middle of yours and didn't let you continue, that this game is like right on that edge of games that there's a lot of games that are intellectual in story and characters. I think Last of Us, God of War, they have something to say, but they don't. They're just trying to be a movie. They're not doing anything special with video games. They're not. I think video games, and I'm a little biased here as someone who loves video games, I think they have the potential to be the greatest of any medium. Maybe virtual reality, or like Sword Art Online virtual reality, like where you literally feel like you're there. Maybe that has greater potential, but that doesn't exist yet. So like right now, from what's possible, I think video games have the ability to be the greatest art form in just like a what's possible sense. And Silent Hill 1, thank goodness, it hits a lot of those boxes that make it just so good. I'm going to let you continue here in a second. I promise I won't keep going too long, but I've played a lot of good games the last month. If you're kind of person, just like generally to anyone listening to this, if you're the kind of person that like doesn't want to play these old games because they feel old, I promise like it'll feel bad for the first couple hours, but like there's things here that would never be attempted in today's industry when AAA budgets are big enough that, and I'm not a doom and gloom industry person that's like games suck now. I like it better when I was a kid and I was stupid, so that's why the games felt better. But there is legitimately a lot of things that these games try that a new game can't, because it needs to recoup costs and have a general audience, which in the case of like The Last of Us and God of War, I think they're able to get past that in a sense. They're able to work with that and make it something better within those confines, but they're still with those confines. Silent Hill doesn't have any of that. There's no rails here that Team Silent would have had to keep themselves in because they didn't need to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, I'll let you continue now. Finally.
No, that's all right. I think you touched on a very important. It's the uniqueness of the situation surrounding its creation that makes it so amazing, because you're never going to see that again. I mean, not outside of the indie space where people can afford to be experimental, but in the indie space, you typically don't have the budget to pull off a Silent Hill, with today's relative graphics.
Yeah, proportionally
right.
the same.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you could make a Silent Hill game by yourself today, but
right
you can't
now.
make
yeah.
you can't make a like the Silent Hill 2 remake level of game by yourself
in your bedroom. Yeah. So it's that helps a lot. But I think touching on your idea of chasing that horror, because same with me. When I first played Resident Evils 1 and 2, they freaked me out so bad that when I would go to pee in the bathroom and the shower curtain was closed, I would open it just in the off chance that the undead were there. And I've been chasing that high forever. And I think the closest I've ever gotten to it was playing through Stalker and just doing your own mind lore in that game, which you can do really well. But Silent Hill is very unique because even if it's not scaring you, there is such a constant oppressive atmosphere that even though it isn't scary, that, for example, with Resident Evil, you walk into a room, you hear a zombie or a hunter, you know that that's in that room and your heart rate spikes and you might be actually scared that that monster is in that room. With Silent Hill, you can run down an empty hallway and feel a sense of dread without there being any enemies present because of that constant oppressive force that's on you. And it's almost stressful. Playing Silent Hill 2, I would have to relax myself because my shoulders are up here.
Yeah,
you know?
it's like if they were playing white noise the entire time, and the white noise is what is scary because it is always there and it never ceases. And there's not a point in the game where, again, one of the reasons I didn't like Resident Evil 1 was because you had these breaks every 10 seconds. You could calm down. You could watch the loading screen happen. And you do a lot in your menu in Resident Evil. You do some menu stuff here, using objects, but it's a lot less. Almost everything is in world, and when you do interact with something, it's like a pop up. So that doesn't feel like a break at all either. This game is just constant atmosphere, and it is unrelenting, but it's also not. It's not overwhelming either. I think it's a good mix where it could be blaring at you the whole time, but they know that doing that is going to wear off, and so it does it in the medium spot where you feel it the whole time, the whole way through.
But it's not fatiguing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what I'm hearing here is that I do want to do the rest of Silent Hill with you, schedule dependent.
Hell yeah.
And I don't know if by rest of Silent Hill I mean 1, 2, 3, or if I mean 1, 2, 3, Homecoming, the Origins, and definitely not Last Message or whatever that one was. I'm not playing that.
That doesn't count.
I got to watch you play it. That was for an hour. I was in that stream. That was more than I needed of that game.
It was torture.
And I don't even think that game was that bad. I think it was just it was nothing.
It wasn't Silent Hill.
It was just they tried.
I'm glad that you played Silent Hill 1 though, and then you did see me stream that game, and now you can kind of understand. It's oh, I get it. Yeah. It's just that is just not what it is.
It's they have no reason to do it beyond what I was saying earlier, where Konami's okay, make this game. We need money. We're a business. That is an aspect that you're always going to find, but last silent message transmission or whatever is it feels like Konami was hey, you can make horror games, make us a game. And then the devs went and they were we have money, we have people that need to work, we make a game, I guess. It didn't feel like they were trying to say anything or do anything beyond the act of making a game.
Hmm.
Silent Hill 1 perfectly doesn't hit that. And I'm interested actually to learn more. Do you touch on the development of the game? I know you usually do, but do you talk about like the impetus of Team Silent and the team's creation at all in any of your videos?
I do. I don't think my Silent Hill retrospective videos are pretty old at this
Mhm.
point, and I like to get a lot more in depth now.
Yeah.
So I would say, looking back, I don't touch on it near enough. Videos from people like Twin Perfect do a really good job of getting into the nitty gritty, using footage from the making of documentaries and
I love
interviews and
documentaries.
stuff. Yes,
I'm
very,
a
very good
documentary
stuff.
nerd.
Hell yeah. Well, like Twin Perfect is a really good place to
Okay.
go for. These are older videos at this point, but
Yeah.
very, very detailed as far as the development of the video games and using information that only came from like first party sources, like an interview from a developer
Yeah.
or somebody quoting an interview from a developer, essentially.
Yeah. Um, I think one last thing. I think we've kind of talked about everything we really need to here. Um, One thing I'm interested is where you think I haven't played the bad games at all. This is the first Silent Hill game I've ever touched. So
Mm.
I actually no, that's a lie. I played like 5 minutes of Silent Hill 2 on the special collection or whatever on Xbox or whatever, but like that
Mm.
doesn't count. This is the first Silent Hill property I've engaged with beyond passing gazes.
Right.
Why do you think it's these three games are so revered in just like not just in Silent Hill fans communities, but in gaming as a whole, in this space? Like I know IGN's like top 100 games of all time. They mention in their Silent Hill 2 blurb, like you could put any
Mm.
one of the three games in this game spot. And although
Yeah.
we think this is the best one, you could make the argument for
Mhm.
any of those three. But this is just this is this is the one we picked because we didn't want to put all three on this list because they kind of achieve the same thing. So
Right.
why do you think those three games all do it so well, and the later games that are not only reviewed poorly, just like critic industry point of view, but like sold worse, or
Mhm.
and why are they not revered to the same level as the trilogy?
I think there's a simple answer that leads into a complicated one. And the simple one is those are the only three games that Team Silent made, which, sounds overly simplistic, right?
Yeah,
But in reality, it's because these are three games that were made by very similar developers. Like there were people in and out of Team Silent, but for the most part, there was a core team and they had a core project. They had a foundation to follow. There are three games that play like each other. So they all three Silent Hill games, you can expect roughly the same experience you just got in Silent Hill 1 as far as how it's going to control combat, exploration, items, puzzle solving. They're all very, very similar in
no
that
Wii
sense.
motion
And
controls.
sadly, no, not yet. We'll mod them in. But they do what I like to call incremental upgrades. So Silent Hill 2, they've added a tiny thing that makes the end user experience just a little more convenient or a little more modern feeling, right? But they don't change the game. This isn't Silent Hill Downpour. It's not an open world game with side quest,
Yeah,
right? I think that's why it is. There are people who got hooked on Silent Hill, and there are these three really great stories. And to engage with those three stories, you have three really similar gameplay experiences. So if you're playing 1 through 3, you can go through them, and it feels like you've gone through an entire just one sitting of a game.
yeah.
Whereas with the other ones, you have Homecoming, which is like a third person action game. You have Downpour, which is an open world game. Book of Lost Memories, which is a top down dungeon crawler.
I'm excited for that
You
one.
have it's God. Honestly, it's so close to being good. You have no idea.
Wow.
If it
Okay.
just wasn't a Silent Hill game. I like dungeon crawlers and like repetitive RPGs where you can level up and
Yeah.
it's very
Says
close in a lot of ways to
literally your
being good.
channel is
It's
named
not.
after one of those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're all different. Origins is a Wiimote mystery detective game. There's
I
not a
I
single
need to
game
track
that's
down a
come
way to
out.
play that one. I saw
It's
some
really
footage.
good, dude.
I was watching a Tom Hewlett like post-mortem, essentially, like the
Mm,
dissecting the hatred that the fan base tends to have towards him, and
yeah,
kind of why a lot of that was misguided, and just the overall,
he's a nice guy.
yeah,
Honestly, I've talked to
um,
him a bunch of
and
times.
just like the general situation there. And they mention a lot of like the design of these motion controls, just in through explaining the development of the games that were around his time at Konami. So
Mm,
um, I've seen some footage and some explanation of like the things in that game, and like I hate motion controls. Whenever like I can't gyro aim. I hate gyro aiming.
me and
I
you both.
I don't play any Switch games that use motion controls. Like I hate Splatoon because
Yeah.
of the motion controls. I think that game would
Mm,
be fun. Like Foam Stars is basically Splatoon minus motion crap. So like maybe I'll like that
mm,
one. But and I never really liked Wii games. I just had it as a kid, so that's one
yeah.
of the things I played. Uh, that game, on the other hand, it's like that. It's like they were like, we need to make a game, but like we're giving you a real reason to use motion controls. It's not just
Yes.
another axis to engage with the game. It is the game. Like
Hmm.
what's it called? WarioWare. The WarioWare games
Yeah.
are kind of like that. We're like, you take the motion controls out, there is no game.
Yeah.
And that game,
Exactly.
that one looks like it's that kind of thing where it actually kind of proves its worth for having to pull out a
100%.
Wii
No,
remote.
you're dead on. Your assumption is 100% dead on.
Yeah.
There are ports of the game that don't use, they use like a PS2 controller, PSP controller. It's still a really good story, and I will play through it for the story. But as far as controlling the game and immersing yourself into the world, you can't have that video game without controlling it. It's just so perfect. And man, I'm stoked for you to play that. It's really cool.
So it sounds like we're gonna do all the Silent Hill games now. Is what
Let's
it
do it,
sounds like.
dude.
I'm not looking forward to that dungeon crawler one, to be honest, but I do want to
It's
play
not
it.
good.
I do want to play it. Like that's one of the like watching a car crash kind of things where like that game,
Yeah.
it looks. I've seen very little footage, but you know that like meme clip of the Silent Hill 2 remake where it's what's his name in Silent Hill 2? What's the main character's name?
James Sunderland.
James is going down a hallway, and then there's like get your daily reward XP boost, and then
Yeah.
the like there's a like 20 objective markers and like microtransactions and loot boxes, and you have to pay $2
Multiplayer.
to crouch and multiplayer. That game looks like that, but
That's what it is.
but like real. So I'm
Yeah.
interested. I'm interested to see what that's like. I don't know if that's one I'll be able to finish though. But I do want to.
No, I didn't. Well, you know what? Actually, I did finish it. When I was talking to Tom Hewlett, he DM'd me and he's like, "Yeah, I saw you reviewed Book of Lost Memories. Can you capture the ending for me? Because nobody has a really good quality one up on YouTube." And I was like, "Yeah, there you go." I
Can
sent
you
him
play
over
this
the
game
ending.
for me because no one else has? I need some of it. That's hilarious.
There is a funness to it, but it is a very bad game, and I couldn't, in good conscience, tell anybody to play it because I hated it. But there are elements
So
where it's
you can't,
like
in
they're
good conscience,
teeter-tottering.
tell someone to play it, but you just told me to play it. So I
Yeah,
see
you
how
have
you
to. You have
I
to
see how
play
you
it.
feel. Okay, makes sense. Okay, I think that is Silent Hill 1. I think we can put a cap on that.
Yeah.
Big question for you. Big one I have. Now that we've done this podcast, we've talking about this game for 2 hours 9 minutes.
Oh damn, yeah.
Maybe not. That's probably not going to be the cut ending up in the video, but we've talked about it for 2 hours. Let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say that this video is better than the original Avalanche Reviews Silent Hill 3 retrospective?
I will say with both of our microphones, it's already killing it in audio quality.
Actually, I wanted to make like a very high tier shit post where I try to recreate that video to my highest extent possible. I get like some blackout curtains and use my CRT and get a crappy microphone. I wanna like frame for frame
You're gonna have to knock out
do
one of your
a
teeth too, because I was missing a tooth when I did.
I'm gonna do like a the Psycho like frame shot to shot reboot where I change nothing, but I do the exact same video but somehow worse. That's what I want to
Please
do
it.
with that
Please.
video. But yeah, any last words on Silent Hill 1?
No, I'm thrilled to hear that you liked it so much, because it is such a cool game, and it's cool to see that you went into it with what I would consider to be the right perspective, where you're like, okay, no internet, I'm going in blind, and then I want to solve these puzzles myself, put the story together myself, and then you're looking for, clarification afterwards. Best way to do it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean that's what I try to do with all these games, because that is the environment that they were made for. Unfortunately, though, that there's a lot of stuff in these games that don't they're not built well enough for me to actually do that. We talked earlier, like Silent Hill is it's smooth. There's no hard corners. You can play this the whole way through, not look anything up, and it'll work. Like Metal Gear Solid 1, I had to constantly look stuff up because like why would I know that I had to look at the manual, but especially because I played the Master Collection, so the manual is an option at the main menu that I have to go to. I would never look at that. I didn't know. I didn't think this game was a backtracking game. Why would I go back and look for a sniper rifle? So I like died 3 times. A sniper like stuff like that, where it was just hard kind of drops that I couldn't get through it without looking it up because I'm just not in that brain space. And I don't have only one game to play that I'm bashing my head against to try to figure out. So like, that's my only choice is look it up. This game I didn't have to, so that's another big plus to it. But yeah, no, I think I've become a Metal Gear Solid enjoyer the past couple months, and I don't think if I were to like rate my favorite games of all time at this point, I don't think Silent Hill would hit like Metal Gear Solid 2 in terms of just what that game has done for me. But I think it's a close contender. Like this has ended up somewhere in my like late top 10, early top teens, I think.
I'll take it.
It
Sounds
does it.
good.
It does so much right. And I think a lot of people have said that it's the constraints that this game has graphically are like part of what makes it work in a sense. And I think especially the way that you've explained the newer games, that may lead into it where there's almost too much going on, too much information, the fidelity is too high, that it doesn't feel as nuanced and kind of vague and simplified in a sense that like is scary because it's so simple. And then Resident Evil 1 was like too simple for me, where like I didn't feel anything. This game just like in many ways it just was the perfect medium of everything I wanted it to be, and I'm very happy I got the experience.
Oh yeah.
All right, so if you have nothing else, I have nothing else. Let me go through my notes, make sure. I did say that the whenever you shoot the little the cliff racers or whatever they are, guys that fly around to the town.
The pterosaurs.
Yeah. When Harry kicks him, he winds up, man. He like his foot, I think, like hits his ass, and he just bam destroys this little creature on the ground.
I love
like,
how
you
you
don't
could
have
do
to.
that. That was such a cool thing.
Yeah, you didn't have to hit it that hard. It's like almost dead. You could just stomp it or whatever. But man has legs on him. All right, biggest takeaway from Silent Hill 1: Harry Mason dresses weird and has legs.
Got a good kick.
Definitely. All right. Well, that has been our Silent Hill 1, not retrospective. What is this? Podcast. Thank you for coming on. We're looking to do Silent Hill 2, yeah?
Yes.
At some point.
Very much so.
I got a copy from Gobbins. He scammed the hell out of me. I paid $12,000 for a copy of Silent Hill, but he said it was a good price. So
that's the going rate. Yeah,
okay. Well, if that's what it is, I guess I didn't get scammed. It gave me a fair price. That is everything for now. I will see you guys. I forgot what my outro is now. I don't know what do I do.
Bye, guys.
Bye.